Hey everyone, it's Ange McCabe with Myrtle and Moss Photography. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my creative overlay pack for Photoshop. So like my sparkler overlays and my flame overlays, the goal here is to enhance your photos. I don't want these to look fake. If they're done improperly, they might stand out like a sore thumb. So our goal here is to choose the overlay that's going to best suit our photo so that it just enhances the photo and doesn't stand out or make someone think to themselves, wow, that's an overlay. So some of these overlays won't work depending on your photo. So to start here, I'm going to be sharing with you my light leaks. So we're going to do light leaks on this photo. I also have stars and moons, which definitely need to be used properly. I have fog, and then I also have this cool little thing that I do. You may or may not have noticed in my feed, but I add curtains. So whenever I'm shooting, I do like to, especially in home sessions, I like to shoot through things to give depth to my photos. But what I have found is sometimes I do fake curtains, and you guys have been asking for it. So I've created some for you. But just like with these light leaks, we want the curtains to also look real. Okay, so let's just start from scratch here. You've downloaded and unzipped the file. So now you need to load it into Photoshop. So here we are. We're in Photoshop. We're going to go over here to our Actions tab. Now, if your Actions tab isn't showing up, you can go here to Window and just make sure it's selected. Okay, now you go over here to this tiny little button there, and we're going to go Load Actions. So then I'm going to click my Creative Overlays. Wherever you've saved it will also be where your action is. And then I'm just going to click Load. Okay, it automatically pops up there. You can see I have my fog overlays, action, and then my light leaks, curtains, moons, and stars. Today I'm also going to be editing a couple of photos using my sparkler and flame overlays just in case you want to see them, so I'll do that here at the end. Okay, so here we are. We have our photo. The reason why a light leak is going to work well for this photo is because we already have light coming in from the sun. We actually have the sun in our photos. We just want to add a little something to this. So we're going to go down here to my creative overlays pack. We're going to select the light leaks. So now we have a few different options here. If you just view them a little bit bigger, it's a little bit easier to see here. So we've got quite a few to pick from. I'm going to actually show you 2 or 3 just so you can see how they work. Okay, so to start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a little light leak coming in from the side. I happen to like this one right here. It's one of my favorites I use often. So I'm just going to click it and drag it on. So it does have a black background. So just keep that in mind. The action gets rid of it. But in order to see what we're doing, so just hit enter, let it load onto your image there. Now I'm just going to go over here to my opacity and turn it down just so that I can see where I'm placing it. I'm just going to take my selector tool. I'm going to drag it and make sure that it's stemming from the source of the light so it makes sense. So it wouldn't make sense for me to start it over here because our sun is right there. Sometimes we already have some naturally existing light leaks in our photo from our lens. So if that's the case, you can enhance it a little bit further just by adding this. So make sure that the light beams are going in the same direction or that makes sense to where the light is coming from. Okay, so I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna plop it right about there. Okay, so you can see that it still has a black background. That's fine. We're going to go ahead and increase the opacity to 100 there, okay? Okay, so now what we do, we make sure that this layer is selected. Make sure not the background, just the top layer. And we're going to click here. We're going to select our light leaks action and go down here to the bottom and just click play. It does its thing. It's going to give you this warning. You just hit OK. So there is our light leak. So if you want to give it more color, what you can do is double click this layer, the hue saturation layer, and then you go right here to this little tab. And when you're trying to change the color of your light leak, what I suggest first is to increase your saturation quite a bit so you can really see that color. And then you can play with your hue. So I probably want it to be quite warm. That's probably good. And I'll just back off on the saturation just a little bit. Now, if you use lightness, if you go too light, it's gonna bring that black back and change colors. But you can play with the lightness on the darker end of things. You can't make it brighter, but you can definitely make it a little bit darker. So there we go. That is a good light leak. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and flatten this because I'm done with this light leak. I'm happy with what it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten it. So I'm just going to right click my background layer and select flatten image. There we go. So if we wanted, so the nice thing about these is you can add more than one, but you have to remember to flatten your layer in between. Okay, so I'm going to go down here again to my light leaks, and I'm going to add I think I'm going to add, let's see here, maybe a little bit of like this glow. So let's go ahead. I want to warm it up a little bit. So the important thing with leeks like this is that we're going to have a hard edge. So you have to make sure you can resize it any way you want. You can hold the aspect ratio just by doing that. Or if you want to stretch it, you can hold shift as you move your object. So we're just going to do that. It's okay if it goes off your screen. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. And then I'm just going to go ahead and click my action again. Let it do its thing. I'm going to hit select. We're going to hit OK. Okay, so let's go ahead and play with our saturation now. So I'm just going to increase saturation. Let's kind of give it, here, let's increase it a bit more so we can really see what we're doing. I think that should be good. Okay, perfect. So it kind of give us a nice haze that I really like. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and flatten that because I'm happy with that. And then let's do a little bit of a sunbeam here. Now the next step that I do is going to be a little bit more intense with Photoshop. So bear with me here. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. So you can change it to any size you want. I just want to give a little sunburst just right where the sun is peeking down there. But I might, let's see here. Let me just decrease opacity. Okay, so I'm going to decrease my opacity just so I can make sure it's going in the right place. I'm going to take my eraser tool here, and I want to erase some of this just so it really blends into the sky. I don't want the beam to be, it's going to be a slightly different tone than the overlay or than the sky, so I don't want it to stand out. So in order to erase some of this, I'm going to go here to my tool. You can't do it right now because it's a smart object, so I need to right click it and click rasterize layer. So now it's just like a JPEG layer essentially, and I'm going to use my eraser tool at 100%. I'm just going to erase this down here just so it kind of blends into the sky, just like that. Perfect. Okay, that shall be good. And then I'm going to bring my opacity back up to 100, and then I'm going to click run again. There we go. So it's just like very, very tiny, adds just like a little extra something, something. And overall, I would be happy with that photo. I go ahead and flatten it and we would be done. So let's go on to the next photo here. Here is a photo that I took, and we're going to be adding a moon to it. Now, when I took this photo, there actually was a moon. It's just out of the frame, and it was kind of like a lackluster moon, and we want to add one that looks a little nicer. So what we're going to do here is select my, go back here to Creative Overlays, select moons. Okay, so now when you're using moons, it's really important that you pick a moon that makes sense for the depth of field that you're shooting in, and don't make them too big unless the moon that night was actually really big. Another thing to keep in mind is that, well, we're kind of fudging reality here. We also, you know, it's nice every now and then for a photo on Instagram to share, maybe just adds a little something, something to a photo. But when our client receives this back, we want them to remember what it felt like in real life. And if there was no major moon, you know, that was like notable, then maybe don't go too crazy on the moons. But every now and then adding one it is nice, and it's just a perfect little touch. So we want this to be relatively realistic looking. Now, I'm gonna make these a little bigger so you can see that every moon has a sharper version and then a softer version. Now, for the most part, I like to use the soft ones, and sometimes once you add it to your photo, you need to make it even softer. And I'm going to share with you how to do that. So let's go and pick a moon. I think this one's going to be a good one for here. Just drag and drop. Obviously, it's too big. So we need to make sure it's like kind of realistic to how big it would be. Okay, so I'm just going to use my select tool. I want it centered right above them. That's probably pretty good. Now we're just going to run the action. And for the most part, your moon should probably be just quite white, depending on your editing. But if it's like summertime and there's, you know, forest fire season, it might be red. So if you do want to change the color of that, you can certainly do that. Just double click your hue saturation layer. Once again, increase your saturation quite high to then choose your color. But we don't, for this particular photo, I'm just going to keep it relatively white. There we go. And that is it for that one. Okay, let's move on to the next photo. Here's a boudoir photo. I took this in a hotel room, and I did actually take the curtains and was shooting through it. But sometimes it's a little bit cumbersome, especially when I'm using my 85mm lens. It's really heavy. It's hard to like have a free hand to shoot through the curtains. So in this particular set, a lot of the curtains in it are actually real, but I felt like this one was just missing something. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna go to my creative overlay pack, select my curtains. Okay, so here we go. And now once again, it's really important to make sure that you pick the right one for your photo. And if it doesn't look real, you might just have to scrap it. So let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and maybe select, let's see. Let's go with curtain number 1. Okay, so we're going to extend it a little bit. That should be good. I'm gonna decrease my opacity just to see where it's falling. Now, if you wanted to make any changes, you can go Control T, which is transform, and you can move them around. I just want to stretch this one out just a little bit more. So I'm holding Shift and just stretching it. Another thing you can do if you want, you can also flip any one of these over by selecting Image, or sorry, Edit, Transform, and then Flip Horizontal. You can do that with any of these overlays, whether it's the moons or like, you know, your light leaks if it's going the wrong direction that you want. So keep that in mind. So now I'm just going to select my overlay here and then just hit run again. There we go. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. You can go ahead and change the saturation if you'd like to match the photo. So I obviously need to turn the saturation down, but let's kind of select the overall tone of the photo. It's a little bit more on like the, a little more on the red side. Let's decrease saturation a bit here. There we go. And I'd be pretty happy with that, and select this one right here. Okay, so just drag it to the size. You can stretch it far beyond the canvas here if you want. I'm just going to double check where it's falling. I did find that the first one, it went a little bit too much onto her skin and we had a bit too much contrast. So I think that this is going to be good. I kind of like the organic feel of this one. The other one was a little bit more straight. So I'm going to go ahead and select my action. Perfect. Okay, I really like this one. Let's go ahead and I'm actually just going to decrease the saturation completely, or like almost completely. There we go. Just because our other curtain there in the background is quite white. So if you want it completely white, you can also just deselect colorize, but we want just a little bit of colors. So let's just keep it at that. Okay, perfect. Okay, let us add a light leak to this photo. So if you've ever heard of the Ring of Fire, that's when you shoot through a little copper tube to get some really cool effects. Now, if you haven't done it or it just wasn't working for you when you tried it, you can add a light leak, but just make sure that it makes sense. So the photos I find work best for this, or when you have like lots of nice warm contrast in the photo, lots of reds, and often when the light's like coming between the couple, it is usually when you'll see the photos that you'll see online. A lot of them are kind of a shot like this. So let's go ahead and open our light leaks again. We're going to go down to, let's go down to this one right here. Now, just because these light leaks are in a certain orientation, like vertical, you can rotate them. They're just an object. So you can rotate them once you put them onto your image as well. So with this one, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And it's okay that it's, the black is, you know, within the frame of the photo because there's nothing that's really touching the edge of it. Our overlay is completely blended in. Okay, so I think actually that's pretty good placement just right there. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. Perfect. Now we need some color to this one for sure. So I'm double clicking my hue saturation layer, increase saturation quite a bit. Now let's go with something that's none of those. It needs to be quite orange. That's probably pretty good. Oh, we can't go that way. Okay. I'm almost thinking that. That should be pretty good for our photo. All right, there we have it. Now, if we're ready to go, we can just right-click our layer and then hit flatten image, and it will be good. Okay, so let's see where we're at here. Got that. Okay, we did that one. All right, now with this one, we're gonna go ahead and add some fog. So as a photographer living in the Pacific Northwest, I love me some good fog. However, it just so happens that most days that are foggy, I don't have anything booked, and fog comes and goes really quickly. So unless you have someone to shoot on hand or a session already booked and it's foggy, then sometimes fudging reality can be nice with some fake fog. So the thing about this session is it actually was foggy, and then by the time we got to this point in the session, the fog was gone. So I'm going to go ahead and add some. So let's open our pack. Going to go to fog, double click. Okay, now there's two different types of files in here. We have the, if you want to add color, and you want to be able to change the color of the fog, then you're going to want to use these ones right here. I guess PNGs, you can do that as well, but you have a little bit, you just run the action the same with these ones as you would with the curtains and the moons and all that stuff. So, but then I also do have PNG files. So unfortunately, you can't see what they look like until you put them onto the photo. These ones are really user-friendly, really easy to use, these three right here. So it's literally just fog that you put on. Okay, so I'm gonna show you, maybe let's use one of these ones first. Let's just say I want it kind of just in the background. So let's just say I want to stretch it a little bit. I'm gonna hold shift and just kind of go like that. Now, you can change it however you want. We don't want to stretch it too much, but I think that should be good. Obviously, it's on his head, and we're going to get rid of that. Another thing to keep in mind is that you want to keep in mind the depth of field and how blurry it would be. So if you want to blur it a little bit, you can go up here to filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur, and then you can do it however you want. So if you bring it down to 0, that's nothing. If you want it just a little bit more blurry, you can go like that. Okay, and then you can also play with your opacity, which is nice. So if you don't want it to be too much, that should be good. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm pretty happy with that. I could also duplicate this layer. So I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate it, and we're gonna drag it over here so that we have some on that side. That should be good. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and erase, but I'm gonna flatten our fog. So I'm gonna hold shift and click both of these layers, and then right click and say merge layers. So now we're going to zoom in. This is a web size file, so it's not too good zoomed in. I'm just going to take my eraser tool at 100%, and I'm just going to go ahead and erase it off his face here and his hair. So I probably want to zoom in quite a bit. Oh, you can see how pixely that photo is. Okay, I'm going to not quite go to the edge of where it is. His head I will, and that's easy. Whoopsies. Control Z or Control Z if you want to erase it. Or sorry, if you want to undo what you just did. And while I'm here, I want to double check that I am actually erasing everything that I want. So I'm just going to use my little eyeball tool there just to look. Oh, I missed some on his face or his neck. There we go. And we're going to go over here to Natasha. I'm going to make my eraser tool a little bit bigger there. Okay, that should be good. Okay, now I'm going to use my eraser tool a little bit lower. I'm going to go like 21% and just start kind of like erasing it a little bit here around their faces, just so there's a little bit less contrast. Doesn't really stand out. We don't want him to look like he's like plucked out of there. So it's kind of going like that. Remember, our whole goal here is to look real. We want this to look real. So sometimes less is more. That's kind of how a lot of things go. Less is more. Okay. And then even if you wanted to make this a little bit less intense, you could even back it off a little bit. So I think, honestly, I think like that looks good. We'll just show you the before and after. Just adds a little something, something. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you're dealing with reflections, unless the fog's sitting like right on top of the water, then you're actually going to get a reflection. So for a second, I'm just going to hide this layer, and I'm going to open up another fog. Let's just show you guys this one. I mean, they all look kind of similar. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just plunk this up here. Let's just say there was some like low-lying fog in the trees. There we go. Okay, so it's obviously too sharp, so we need to make it blurry. My whole theme here is to make it not look fake, guys. Okay, so we want it probably like, it's obviously too white, but we want it probably that blurry. Decrease our opacity down, something like that. This is very subtle. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my layer, okay? And then I am going to flip this layer. So I'm going to go image, because we're doing the reflection now, okay? Bear with me. Image, no, sorry, edit, transform, flip vertically, okay? And then just use our selector tool, bring it down here. And I'm going to make this one even a little bit less. There we go. It's all about the details, guys. Another thing that you'd want to do if you're like being really nitpicky is squish it a little bit because there's a little bit of distortion there. So we're actually just going to go free transform, and we're just going to hold it and then flatten it a bit because reflections are usually squished a bit. So there you go. If you wanted to make it look really real, that's what you would do. But I do want to go over here to the layer there that's on the trees. I'm just going to make it can I rasterize the layer? Can I do that? There we go. So now I can actually erase. It was a smart object. And I'm just going to go and erase, increase my, there we go. And just erase some of the tree branches that might be in front of it. Okay. So this is like super nitpicky stuff, guys. Okay. Anyways, you get the gist of it. Just make sure that it looks real. We don't want it to look fake. And then we can add back in our other layer if we want. Beautiful. Okay, let's see if we have another photo here ready to go. Okay, we're gonna do, I know that this pack doesn't include sparkler overlays, but I love them so much and I just wanna show you how they work in case you're interested in getting them. So same kind of thing, you download them just the same you would with the creative overlay pack. And I'm just gonna select a overlay that's gonna make sense for this photo. Make sure that I'm going to avoid going on people's faces unless you intentionally want it to go on someone's face. So let's go and select something along the lines of this one. I think should be good. And then we're just going to drag it to the size of our photo. And I'm going to double check that it's on her face a little bit. So let's just say I want to get rid of those two. So I'm just going to rasterize my layer. I'm going to take you can actually just take the eraser tool and have it at 100%. I'm just going to erase it there. Another thing that you can do is just use a black brush. Doesn't really matter, but we want to make sure our layer is selected. And then I'm just going to go to my sparkler overlays, which you also get an action for that, but it's essentially the same action. It works the same as the other ones. And then you just double click hue saturation. And then this one's really important to make sure you match the color of your photo. So I do put this on a fully edited photo, and this is one of the last steps. If you can also add grain on top of it, which just kind of like ties it all together and makes it look even more real. These are actual sparklers that I've photographed, so there's nothing fake about them. Just make sure that you use them properly so that they blend in with your work and they don't look like an overlay. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just change the tone of this to the same tone as like my overall, the photo, something maybe kind of like that, and then decrease the exposure or the saturation quite a bit. We want sparklers to be actually almost white, but because they are taking up a lot of space in the photo, especially some of like the bigger bokeh sparkles, we want to make sure that the color tones aren't too jarring to see. So that is good. I would go ahead and flatten that. Now you can also go in, it comes with individual sparkler overlays too. So if you just go here, you have individual sparklers, and sometimes sparklers, just because of how you captured it, or just so happened that a couple of the sparklers in the background burnt out, I got you. This is what they're for. So you can actually just select the ones that make sense. So let's just say we want, for the sake of this, we want her sparkler to be nice and big. Let's go this one. We can just drag and drop. Just make sure that it's landing where it should, and you can rotate any direction. So let's just go like that. So just plop it right there. If you want to double check, you can always just go here to your opacity, make sure it's in the right spot, which it is. You can, oopsies, we're going to do a couple flames here for you too. Oh, wrong one. There we go. Okay, let's just do a couple. You can do a few of these at the same time. So I want to share with you how to do that. Let's go and select, let's just, you know, for the fun of it, let's just drop one down here. Let's just make one kind of big, like someone was standing right there. Okay, that is good. You can add multiple, you could go crazy and add as many as you want. The only important thing here to note though, is that you don't overlap them. So let me just share with you. So let's just say we wanted to add one here. You want to make sure that your overlays aren't actually touching. It's okay if like the black parts are, but you don't want any of the sparklers to actually be overlapping, or it will kind of get screwed up there. So let's just go and put this one up here, rotate it a bit. There we go. And make sure that you're picking the right depth of field. So this one actually probably isn't good for up there because it needs to be a little bit more blurry. Actually, it's fine. Well, we'll just do it. So there we go. So now I'm going to select all of my overlays. So you hold shift and you select them over here. right click and go merge, where is it? Merge layers, there we go. So now it's just one layer. It's really important to make sure you're just working with one layer when you use the action. So then you click Sparkler Overlays and just let it do its thing. And then we're gonna go to Hue Saturation. We're actually gonna just get rid of all of the saturation there. There we go. Perfect. And then one last photo I want to share with you is my flame overlays. So if you've ever been to a wedding where it was outdoors, or maybe the venue, so it was outdoors and they were blowing out because of the wind, or maybe you're at a venue that unfortunately didn't allow real open flame, or you're doing a styled shoot and you don't want to, I guess, waste the candles for your stylist. There's a few things you can do here. I got you. Fake it till you make it, friends. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in, and I'm actually, just to start, I'm just going to retouch these little, the wicks. If you can in person, make sure they're straight, then it's going to save you just a little bit of photoshopping. So I'm just going to use my clone stamp. I'm just quickly working on a duplicated layer, and I'm just going to get rid of the parts of the candles that are going down. So I'm just doing, using clone stamp to just select an area and then, oopsies, and then just get rid of it. So there we go. I'm gonna go over here. Okay. I think that's it. Okay, so there is our prepping done. Perfect. I'm just gonna flatten this because we're good with that. Now I'm gonna go to my flames, and there's lots of different flames. Remember, try not to use the same one for all of your images, because, you know, you want them to be a little different. And it's very rare that a flame would be going perfectly straight up unless if there was any breeze at all, right? So these flames aren't included in the Creative Overlay pack, but I just wanted to share with you in case you were interested in using them. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and use just my selector tool here, change the sizing. Now we want to make sure that the flame is the right size. So that might still be a little bit big for that one. And you also want to make sure that they, like if you need to make it a little bit more blurry, if it was in the foreground, you can also do that by selecting blur, Gaussian blur. And that's probably a little bit better for that one actually. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. We're going to add all the flames at once. Unless there's overlapping candles, then you might have to go in and change it up. Like do a few, flatten, and then go back in and add more flames. Okay, so let's do that. Maybe we'll put it here. Okay, maybe we'll just go filter, Gaussian blur. So if you, it remembers what you did. So if you just select Gaussian blur, it will save the last thing that you did under the filter folder. Okay, let's go and add this one. So they're all pretty straight up. I'm gonna maybe make one a little bit sideways. This one definitely needs to get a little bit smaller there in the background. Okay, and also it's important to put the flame just over top of, kind of hovers over top of the wick. So keep that in mind. Okay, and you know what? All of these are gonna be a little bit blurry, which is fine. Let's do one that's a little bit blown. That's good. Perfect. We're gonna make that one blurry as well. Okay, we got one more to go. Sorry, this is overkill. I should have picked one with only a couple flames. Okay, and let's go, let's do that one. So they're all, there's not a lot of wind here, but we want to make sure that our flames are all a little different. Okay, and that should be good. Once again, just gonna add some blur to that. Beautiful. Now we're going to select all of those. So hold our first one, hold shift all the way down to our last one, right click, merge layers, and then we're going to run our action. All right. So now that those layers are all merged, I'm just going to go ahead and run the action. I'm just going to use the sparkler overlay action. It's the same. Okay. And we need to make sure that we have our colors nice and rich. So I'm going to increase our saturation. And we're going to pick a color, a flame that kind of makes sense for our photo. So something like that would probably be good. And then just play around with the opacity or with the saturation. And flames are actually pretty intensely colored. So I think something like that should be pretty good. Perfect. Go ahead and flatten it, and we are done. Thank you so much, guys. I hope that you have so much fun. A couple little pointers. Just make sure that you're picking the right overlay for your photo, making sure that it's real. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I hope that you are already in my education group. If you're not, it's called Stay Inspired with Ange McCabe. You can find it on Facebook. I also go live occasionally, or not occasionally, quite often in my group, as well as go live on YouTube. I go live on YouTube occasionally, but I do have lots of education on there as well. Thank you so much for being a part of my community and for all of your support, and I cannot wait to see what you create. Thanks, friends.